F1 steering wheels are complicated objects, and for a reason. They are the main interface between a driver and a whole bucket load of potential setups. So it'll come as no surprise that they are top secret. Over a race weekend, teams want to give away as little information as possible to their rivals, hence all the secret party mode buttons. However, what we were able to get our hands on was Renault F1 reserve driver Jack Aitken to run us through the main differences between a current generation steering wheel and one from 2012.
Obviously, this being a bit of an older wheel from the 2012 car, it's from the V8 era. We didn't have hybrid engines back then. Quite a few things have changed since then. For one thing, we've got a big LED screen which takes up a bit more of the steering wheel rather than this old-fashioned. But it's simple, but it works. But now we get a lot more information on our screen. We get delta, we get brake temperatures, tyre temperatures, anything you want really. It's all customizable. Whereas with this, it's a little bit more limiting. The other difference is generally on the cooker knob, you would have a lot more what they call PU settings than you do now. Now, as it is, you've got the mix button and traction control, which is outlawed now, but now we have many sub-menus basically just to define how you want to have the recovery, how aggressive you want the deployment to be out of the corner and all of this kind of thing. You also generally have, this button is actually a recharge button on the current wheel, and that's just when you've done the qualifying lap to recharge the battery, you just press the recharge. It slows the car down a lot, but you have to keep the battery well stocked. Generally, like I say, it's fairly similar. Those are the main differences.
As Jack mentioned, a lot of the buttons that he is about to explain still exist on a current F1 car. So listen, take notes, as you're about to have a masterclass in how to work a Formula 1 car.
This is from the 2012 Lotus, as it was then, Renault, which Kimi Raikkonen was driving and won with in Abu Dhabi. So in the top left, we've got something which is a bit outdated now, as some of the things here are. It's called multi-map. That's basically just a quick set feature to get a range of settings into a place where you want them. So it's kind of like, instead of having to change each individual one, you can do a quick shortcut there. OV is overtake. Again, slightly outdated, but was used for DRS back in the day. And just a toggle switch on, off, easy. PRB, I don't actually know what that one does because someone stick it over it and it doesn't say what it used to anymore. And I don't drive this car full time, but it does something. Probably to do with a roll bar, but I'm not sure. That's a guess. BB. It's to do with the brake bias, and there are quick settings on the back of the steering wheel and in the car, but again, if you want to go deeper into detail, that's how you do that. Oil, it's not a button you usually want to be using, it's to sort out your oil transfer. Yeah, if you're doing that, then something's probably gone wrong, so want to avoid that. D is for drink, and delivers nice hot water into your mouth because it's been heated up by the V8 behind your back. Now that says traction control system trim, which is to do with the TCS mode, traction control mode. They're both linked. Obviously, traction control now outlawed in Formula 1, but it used to be a feature, and the driver could tweak it according to how responsible he wanted to be for his spin. And the trim was just an extra feature on that, another level of detail. Nowadays, when we do demo runs like today, we usually just keep it in the off mode because that's more fun. Revs, that's basically your rev limiter. Again, usually you wouldn't be touching that. That's something the engineer would preset. During the race, you could be playing with it maybe for reliability, but it's usually something that you tune up through the weekend from practice through to qualifying, where obviously you ramp it up. This is what we call the cooker knob, which is the most important rotary on the steering wheel. And as you can see, it has quite a lot of different things on it. A few things blanked out now, but usually you always leave it in the 12 o'clock position. And what the cooker knob does, in conjunction with these buttons, which are just +1, -1, it basically takes you through all the sub-menus in the car, of which there are many. For example, tyre is a common one. If you need to switch from dry to wet tyres, they have a different circumference, so the engine has to account for that, and that's what that was. So you go from a dry tyre to a wet tyre just by doing that. Go back to 12. If you had a failed sensor, you'd get big flashing warnings all over your LED screen. To get rid of that, you'd get a message like fail A04 off, and you go fail up to 4, press OK, switches off the sensor, you can go back to driving. Sounds complicated, but you get used to it, and that's what that does. There are a few settings on there that you would rarely use, but you can change your display if you wanted to see something else. You can change to a safety car mode to save fuel, aero maps if you want to be doing aero cruises, that kind of thing. So then we've got mix. Mix again is more to do with the power unit and how they regulate that. Again, you wouldn't touch that unless the engineer tells you to, and that's to fine tune as you can imagine, the fuel mix in the car and what kind of performance they want to get from it at different points in the race. So you'd be playing with that a little bit through the race. Exit, it's a bit ambiguous, but what it means is on the exit of corner, it regulates the differential. So that's a tool that the driver will be using quite a lot, and it's more up to the driver than the engineer and how he feels. So what it specifically does is tells you how locked the diff will be on the exit of the corner when you're on throttle, so you can play with that as you wish. 1 is completely open, 14 is fully locked and very, very solid. N, that's for neutral, quite an important button. If you're in 3rd gear or below, you don't have to deal with the clutch or anything like that, just press neutral and it plonks the car in neutral. Fairly self-explanatory. OK, we've been through, that's for the sub-menus. Box, when the radio comes for you to box, to come into the pit lane, instead of getting back on the radio and saying, yep, OK, I've heard you, you can just say, box, I've heard you, confirmed, and that will mean the mechanics are ready to come out and meet you in the pit lane. R is radio, and that's a toggle switch, so a little red light will flash up there to show you that you're on the air. You just have to press it, speak, and then press again. You do have instances where drivers forget to turn it off because it's a toggle, so you can hear them breathing heavy, swearing, all of that fun stuff sometimes, but we try and avoid that. This is clutch, how aggressive you want it to be on the drop. So if you want it to be really aggressive, to get a really quick reaction on the start, then you can be more aggressive with it. Or if you want to just pull away safely out of the pit lane or something like that, no rush, you can change it. 1 is very aggressive, and you can go all the way over to 12, which is not aggressive at all, very soft. Almost like your road car, but not really, because it's an F1 car. Then you've got the pit button, and if you look closely, there's a little sort of surround around that. Very important, because obviously when you're holding the wheel, and if you get a bit of an oversteer moment or something like that, we have had instances in the past where a driver accidentally presses the pit limiter button, does an awesome save, thinks he's a hero, comes out of the corner, presses the gas, and he doesn't go anywhere because he's on the pit limiter. So we have that surround just in case. And again, it's toggle switch, 80 kilometers an hour or 60 if you're at Monaco. And then finally, we've got entry, which is similar to exit, it's for the differential. And again, 1 being very open and 12 being very locked, so the driver can just play with that as he wishes. LED screen, not like we have now in Formula 1, but used to be the commonplace thing. Usually, again, you can change this, but you'd have speed here, your gear there, and your lap time there, or some form of delta. These clusters would give you an indication if there was a yellow flag or a red flag or something like that. It would start flashing at you, so you've got no excuse if Vettel is screaming blue flags behind you. Then you've got the LEDs, and I'm sure everybody's seen them on the TV onboards. You usually get some form of green, red, blue, and blue means shift. Going on to the back, we've got an array of paddles, 8 to be exact. Usually, modern day, it's quite secret what they have on the back of the steering wheel, but because this is an older one, we don't care really anymore, and we've taken all the top secret bits off. But basically, you've got your clutch paddles, and they do the same thing by regulation. Why do you have 2, you might ask? Well, it's because if you come into the pit lane and your box is on the right, you want to be able to use the right paddle because you go over like that. If you're at a different track where your pit box is on the left, then again, when you come into the box, you want to be able to pull with that hand. So it's just to give the driver the option. Gear shift, up, down, very simple. Then these ones are modifiers. If you prefer, for example, to have your DRS on the paddle, you could just have it there and that could be your preference. If you wanted to have a preset diff mode for turn 6 at Barcelona, pull that one and the engineers can configure it. These little ones back here, which are a bit sneaky, are again, can be done to whatever you want really. They're free floating paddles. Usually it's brake bias, so a quick set. So if you want to go 0.5% forward, 0.5% back, you often see it on the onboard. It comes up on the screen, Hamilton going 5% forward for one corner versus another. That's just a little quick set there. And of course you've got the quick release in case you need to make a speedy exit, and that's just a central locking. The other thing about these is if you ever see a driver who's just been taken out of a race and he's really angry, pulls off the steering wheel and he just flings it across the track, that's 20 grand in technology that he's just thrown across the track onto the tarmac and probably broken a fair few bits because they're not the sturdiest things. And yeah, obviously we're told not to do that. And that is a Formula One steering wheel. It's an old one, but it's got most of the same buttons and bits that you would see on the current car. And it's quite complicated when you look at it, but really you're only using a few buttons at a time. And you've always got someone to tell you what to do in case you mess it up. Hope you've enjoyed, and that's been my Formula One steering wheel guide thing.